Um, obviously this season we're getting George Kittle back, and I think George Kittle obviously is still well respected throughout the league. However, we haven't really been able to see him at his peak in, it seems like, a few years just due to injuries overall. So can you give us maybe a reminder for people that might be forgetting, especially going into, the fantasy draft this year, and there's some other tight ends that are kind of ascending, the guy Waller out of the Raiders, and obviously, with Kelsey and stuff like that. Give everybody a reminder of what makes George Kittle so unique. And then if you could talk about what makes George Kittle so unique specifically for a team like the 49ers that utilizes him differently than maybe other tight ends are utilized in other offenses.
Yeah, I think in the NFL right now, it's Kelsey or Kels or whatever he said is how he, but everybody knows.
He did say that it's not pronounced.
He said, well, it's actually Kels. Everybody just calls me Kelsey. Whatever. It's him and Kittle, 1A and 1B, and the rest don't matter. I mean, Waller's been around for a while. He kind of broke out last season just due to circumstances surrounding the Raiders offense, but it's not that he's bad. I just think Kittle and Kelsey are a league above everyone else in that position. And for Kittle's, I'll say this about Kelsey. Everyone just thinks that he's a receiving tight end and does whatever he does because it's the Chiefs offense, but the man can run block. He does not get enough credit for that. And he's always up there in run blocking grades and efficiency with Kittle. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. So he's up there as the league's best, and Kittle is right there with him. For Kittle specifically, he wasn't a guy who showed the nuance of running routes as a tight end in college, just because Iowa's offense is so run heavy and CJ Beathard was his quarterback. But when he came to the NFL, the first year he was good. He wasn't what he is now, obviously, but by year 2 for Kittle, you really saw the route running ability come into play, and he was doing things he wasn't doing in year 1 or even in college. So he's evolved as a route runner, and he's one of the best route runners that they have, and is probably one of the best route runners as a tight end in the league. Mm-hmm. Again, next to Kelsey, but that is what has really separated him. He's always been a monster in the run game. He was at Iowa, and he was. He has been in the NFL. It's just in the draft, you don't really look at things like that. Things move so fast in the news cycle that, when you see someone like Kittle, all you see is run blocking. You think they're not going to spend a high pick on a guy that just run blocks as a tight end. They want somebody with ability. Well, they got him, I think that it paid off on their end because I think they knew that he could develop into what he is. And no one else obviously took a chance on him until that late. So,
especially in this type of offense, a guy like Kittle is invaluable because, like you said earlier, one thing about Kyle Shanahan, he loves running to the outside and to the edge. And if you have a guy like Kittle that could basically seal off that edge, it makes the run game. He makes the run game run. I mean, obviously in 2019 when he played most of the season, they were ranked number 2. And then, last season when he was injured most of the season, they dropped to 15th. And I think a lot of that had to do, obviously the offensive line was a little bit suspect last season, but Kittle not being there, I think played just as big of a role as any offensive lineman that wasn't there at that time.
Yeah, I think so too. 2018 is where Kittle really established himself and separated himself as a run blocker. Everybody knows he broke the record receiving that year for tight ends, but don't underestimate his run blocking that season. And I think, a few games that stand out to me were the Cardinals game at home, the Packers game, and probably a few others. I wrote about because I know this because I wrote about it at the time. And he's a monster. He pancakes guys left and right in the run game. There's one play in particular against Atlanta in 2019 where he drives that defender into the end zone. And then the camera pans to him and he's just laughing, because he just pancaked the hell out of the defender. It's just that's just like the infectious attitude that he brings. And the dominance that he has in one
He wants
play.
to be a great blocker. He wants to be known for blocking.
He wants to be an enforcer on the field, even though his demeanor is like fun guy, like National Tight End Day, haha, funny type stuff. But he in the back of his mind, he's looking at you thinking he's going to destroy you, and he will.
Can you talk a little bit about his ability? You know, he's part of the Yak Boys. What does he do that causes him to be so elite in gaining yards after contact?
Well, he's fast, obviously, and it's in the route running. I mean, yeah, we give Shanahan a lot of credit for scheming guys wide open, and I'm as much of a Shanahan stan as you are. But you know, for someone like Kittle who understands, like, okay, I've got this guy with this leverage on me. I know how I can get open, and he does. And when necessarily you wouldn't think somebody would get open, you know, I mean, against like. Examples like against Ebukam in 2018 against the Rams, like Kittle was just finding ways to get open on Samson Ebukam when he was covering him. You know, he's very good at quickly reading defender leverage and knowing on the route, okay, if I do this, I can get open on this guy right here. And selling it and putting all his body and, you know, basically putting his body into the route and selling out and getting open. Like it's almost like, you know, in Shanahan's offense, it's kind of theatrical to watch these guys get open because they are doing a lot of things that you necessarily wouldn't notice on game day and how they get open. Like just it's an act. It's all like acting, and they're selling it really well. And he does that. Like if you watch the touchdown he scored against the Cardinals on Halloween in 2019, where he threw what's his name to the ground twice. Watch how he gets open on that play specifically. And it's all an act, man. He just understands the nuance of leverage being played on him, coverage that they're showing, and where the space is to get open. And he gets it. And so that's how he gets all his yak. And he's just a hard, physical, fast runner.
Do you feel like in another system, he would be just as elite, or do you think that it's the right combination of skill set player and scheme coach that is getting the unlocking who George Kittle actually is?
No, I think he would be elite in any scheme. When you know you see, you know who the tight ends are that are, you know, good in the league, and you can see they'd be good in any scheme. I just don't think the vast majority of teams have a tight end they can truly rely on like that. You know, some guys pan out for a few years, you know, Kyle Rudolph, Zach Ertz, you know. I think the Saints probably have one of the better tight ends.
And Cook?
Yeah, Cook. I always want to say Cooks and Cook. I always get those mixed up, but yeah, and Cook. But they're hard to find, and so when you have them, you know, as much as it's like not a position that's valued, having someone like Kittle, who lines up all over the field, that's what Shanahan wants, and that's where the value is.
And you're starting to see it. Obviously, you know, Atlanta got Pitts in this year's draft, and you're starting to see these more athletic these athletes start moving into, you know, the tight end role, because it's pretty much an unguardable position once they get to so elite, because they're going to be too fast for that linebacker and too big for that safety or corner that's going to cover them. So it becomes just a matchup nightmare for defensive coordinators to have somebody as elite as Kittle.
And that's a good point, because when you have Kittle, who's a tight end, and you line him up in line as a tight end, now the defense has to account for staying in their base personnel. Well, if Shanahan catches you in your base personnel and you get a linebacker on Kittle, I mean, he's going to pound you in the running game to that side, or he's going to get a 50-yard gain or something out of it in the passing game. I mean, they're just so good at keeping teams in their base personnel defensive packages and getting athletes like Juice and Kittle on linebackers that they're always going to, you know, the yak is always going to be there for the taking.